Okay, so to make our dragon eyes, you're going to need a few things. You're going to need our 6-inch piece of paper. You're also going to need a pencil, and eventually you will need a Sharpie. To start this off, I'm just going to be using the pencil. I'm going to turn my paper so it looks more like a diamond and not like a square. So I'm going to have one corner facing me. And now I'm going to start off with my drawing. So to start, I'm going to draw the shape of my eye. And I want to bring my pencil in from the corner just a little bit. And I'm going to draw a big curved line, kind of like a big rainbow, just like that, from one end to the other. Notice that I want my eye to be nice and big so that it takes up most of the paper. Then I'm going to do the same thing. I'll come back here to the beginning and I'll go down and up. Just a curved eye like that. Now that I have my kind of almond shape right here, I need to add the iris of my eye. So I'm going to come to this side and I'll add a curved line like this. And I'll also add a curved line over here, just like that. So I've got my eye shape, I've got my iris. Next, I need to add my pupil, which is this black centerpiece. Now, before I add my pupil, I'm going to add 2 circles. 1 and 2, and you can see that that's going to become the shiny parts of my eye. Now once I've added those in, then I can add my pupil or the center of my eye. So I'm adding kind of a thin sliver shape with 2 curved lines, just like that. So now I have my eye, my iris, and my pupil. Once you feel good about that, the next thing we want to do is add in some lines for our eyelids. So to do that, I'm going to come right here to the inner corner of my eye, and I'm just going to draw a curved line that follows along my eyeball, and I'll let it trail off towards the end. That'll be my top eyelid. And I'll do the same thing along the bottom. Curved line, and just kind of let it trail off and finish towards the end. Now, at this point, if you'd like to add some spikes or some eyelashes, you're welcome to do that. Or if you'd rather not add those, that is totally your choice. I'm going to add them. I think they look cool. So I'm adding some triangles on the edge of my eyeball. Now, we're ready to move on to the scales. So to move on to the scales, the first thing I want to do is add this little triangle that goes in the corner of my eye. So I'm going to put that triangle right here. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. And that kind of helps guide the direction of your scales. So before we add the actual scale shapes, I'm going to add some light lines to help me guide where my scales will go. So I'm going to start over here in the corner, and I'll go up and over my eye and out the other side. So I'm going to start over here, up and over and out the other side. And I'm going to keep on going, up and over, up and over. Notice I made them nice and light, and I only added about 3 lines here. If you make your lines too close together, your scales are going to be really, really small. Now I'm going to do the same thing along this way. I'm going to come down and all the way up and out the other side. Down and up, and down and up, down and up. So 1, 2, 3 lines. Now I'm ready to add my scales. Now that I have the outline for my eye and the guides for where my scales are going to go, now I want to add in my scale pattern. And you'll notice that these scales are kind of loose rectangle shapes. They don't need to be perfect. Some will be smaller, some will be bigger, and that is just fine. But what we're going to do is we're going to use these guidelines to help us see where our scales are going to go. So I'm going to start right here along the top of my eye. And what I'm going to do is I actually use this line as part of my scales. So I'm going to add some rectangles, kind of almost like a brick pattern, leaving a little bit of space in between. So I'm following that line, adding my rectangle scales all the way out. And I'll do the same thing for the next line. Some of them are bigger, some of them are smaller. I'm just leaving a little bit of space in between them. Now, when you get up here into these outer corners, you kind of have to fudge it a little bit and just try to imagine what it would look like if the scales continued going off the page. Now I'm going to do the same thing underneath of the eye. So I'll use this line, and I'll create my scales going along the eye. Notice in some places the shape might get a little bit funky, and that's just fine. Just use what you need to fill that space. All right, now my dragon has their eye, their eyelids, and their scales. Last thing I'm going to do is add just a few lines inside of this little triangle just to help give it a little bit of texture. I'll also look and see if there are any spots where I maybe need to add a few little scales. And once I feel good about it, it is time to trace in Sharpie. Now, when it comes time to trace the scales, I'm not tracing my guidelines. I'm just going to outline the rectangle shapes that I made. So each scale is going to be its own rectangle. Okay, I have my dragon eye all outlined. Next step, I'm going to move on to color. However, before I do that, I do want to make sure that I take one of my erasers, and I'm just going to erase any extra pencil lines that may have gotten left behind. Don't panic if you still have some that you can still see a little bit, because we are going to be coloring over these in crayon anyway, so you really won't see it. I'm just going to get rid of any that are very obvious. And now we're ready for color.